Welcome to the Community ROI podcast. Here, senior community experts, founders, and C-level managers tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about how a community impacts business growth. By listening to these conversations, you'll get actionable steps on how to connect community goals with business goals to skyrocket business growth while still bringing extreme value to community members. My name is Yurii. I help people and brands shine through communities and personal connections. And my guest is Drew Pontikis, a true champion of collaboration and growth, passionate about coaching and helping people flourish, who's built thriving communities of practice at PwC UK and beyond, and also organizing the Ministry of Testing meetups in Peterborough. So welcome, Drew.
Hi, Yurii. Thanks for having me.
Super happy to talk to you. And it was really fast. We've just connected and then like the next day, okay, almost the next day, so we are having this podcast conversation. Can't wait to learn from all your experience. Always a little bit of egoistical way. Still, what's your definition of a community for business?
Okay, so for community for business, I mean, my sort of realm and domain is with communities of practice, specifically working with. And I think that everywhere I've worked, I've seen the benefits of having communities of practice, not just on the people who are part of them, but actually for the business themselves. So I think my definition for a community for business is actually, it's kind of filling in the gaps of what an organizational structure builds for it kind of, I've heard it called glue work, if you like, and holding all the parts together, helping everybody be more effective. And when I'm kind of selling the idea of a community to people within the business and with senior leadership, we're talking about things like helping maximize the potential and the value that your people can generate for themselves and for the business. So I think that's probably the way I would define it.
For those who don't understand what the community of practice is, can you please define what it means?
Yeah, sure. So a community of practice is a community where people come together, generally based around three sorts of areas. So people who are seeking a sense of community, so to find people who are like them, a common domain, so something that they're all interested in, and so it generally is something that they're practicing. So community of practice. So almost all of my experience is in the tech sector. So you might have a community where you have agile practitioners from across an organization come together, spend time together, actually learn from each other about their successes and their failures, and actually build that collective body of knowledge and experience. And I think the reason that they're so important is because even now, if I use a dirty word and say silo, everybody knows silos are bad things, and we can't have silos, of knowledge and place. But organizations are, generally speaking, they are quite siloed because we are product focused, particularly in the tech sector. We have multidisciplinary product focused teams. And quite often you might be the only person in that team who does the role that you do, or cares about things in the way that you care about them, or looks at a problem in the way that you look at it. And that's quite isolating. It's quite lonely, and you can find yourself going quite stale. But for a business, the problem is you have one person who's over here solving a problem and finding the way through it, but you also have this person who's way over here who's got like a similar but different problem, who is having to start again. So you're reinventing the wheel every single time you have a problem. And communities of practice bring those people together, and they share the experience, they share the connection, they build connections across the business, and they make organizations, they make roles, they make capability much more resilient than they would be otherwise.
When you are saying that, I can just feel this pain of like reinventing the wheel in different parts of the organization, and when our different divisions or like teams are creating like pretty similar thing, and then like they are going to meet up. I'm working on that. Oh, I'm working on that too. Like, how the hell we did not talk to each other at all? Like, okay, so
yeah.
And yeah, please add up.
No, I was laughing. So one of the I said, when you say that, for example, that applies in all walks of life. So one of the things that I didn't ask before we started, but I was thinking, you've got years of experience working as a podcaster. I've been thinking about starting up a podcast, but I've got no way of knowing where to start, what the right tools are, what's going to be a pain, what's going to make my life much easier. I've got a big long list of problems that I've got to solve that you've already solved. So I could just ask you. Now I know you. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's just re you know re reinventing the wheel every time to solve the same problems. It's so
exactly.
inefficient.
Exactly. And I have a long of list of answers, so ask me later.
Yeah.
And what's your definition of a community?
Okay, so in the context we talked about, so to my mind, I think it's very important that the community set themselves a goal, because otherwise it becomes work rather than a community. And they've already got goals for their work. We've got to deliver this on time. People have got plenty of goals as part of their job. We don't need to add to that. So a community should be, okay, well, what do we want to achieve? Now, generally speaking, unless as an organization you're doing something wrong, the goals of that community will probably align to the business. Now, if you've got a community said, our goal is to find a way out of this organization as quickly as possible, you're doing something wrong, and you've kind of got bigger problems than the fact that people are doing that. So generally speaking, what will happen is that community will come together and say, well, we want to get better at what we do. And those goals, that focus, those goals will kind of drive that community's behavior. Now, I always advocate that a community of practice should have a lead, have a leader, not specifically a manager, because that's wrong, but having someone who is there to hold the community account, to be designated as the person who will challenge and question that community, and that leader should be aware of that goal. They should keep focus on that goal, and they should constantly reflect on that goal with the community and say, are we achieving these goals? Are we working towards them? Are we getting closer? Are they still what we want? Are they still the right things for us?
You mentioned that it's like coming on top of your work and experiences. So like you want to get better at something, and still it's like your extra time, but everyone has lives. People have families, dogs, pets, whatever, Netflix, worst case scenario. And what keeps such community members motivated?
Okay, so I think there has to be a clear value proposition to any member of a community, and say, so that it's clear and obvious to them that they want to be part of it. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got that wrong plenty of times. And I know I've sat in community sessions where one or two people have turned up, and you think, okay, well, that's a disaster. That's not gone well. What am I doing wrong here? What is it that is not providing value to people? And when it's a work-based community, you go and ask people and say, hey, how come you didn't turn up? And they say, oh, we had deadlines, or we had to do this, or we had to do that. There's always something that's more important. So actually understanding what it is that is really important to the members of the community and focusing on those things is really fundamental in order for their success. Now, you can do that in lots of different ways. And one of the ways that I like to encourage people is, don't just focus on one single type of activity, and don't just make it as don't be a single issue community. Don't be a single structure community. So we all know it's easy to come along, you get a guest speaker, the speaker comes along and they talk, and you learn from the speaker. It's all one way and it's transactional. And those are great because you are adding something to the community. Firstly, that's not for everybody. Second, sometimes your speaker isn't very good, and it's not the sort of thing that people want to talk about. And thirdly, there is a limited pool of people, and you find yourself over time having to recycle and go back to the same people over and over again. So mix it up, bring other things to the table. So one of the things that I've been learning about over the past few years, and that I I now force into conversations, as I'm about to do now, is social learning approaches, and actually bringing people together and learning together and creating something new. And those are the kind of sessions that I enjoy running and I enjoy being part of, is actually bringing people together and say, okay, we've got no fixed agenda today. We don't know what we're going to end up with, but we're going to create something together. Here is the structure we're going to do. Let's go and do it. Now, again, those aren't for everybody. Some people want that transactional exchange of information, but having that sort of mix up of things keeps things fresh and keeps things interesting. It keeps things varied and keeps things engaging for people. I'm also a big advocate of non-business focused community sessions. So I refer to it as board games. But it's not always board games. Sometimes it might be lunch. Sometimes it might be it might be board games. It might be I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I was at school, last day of term, someone always bring like a Game Boy or something, because I'm old, and bring it, and that was the one that everybody wanted to go and play with. I've been in communities where they have a FIFA competition and things like that.
Okay.
Things that not necessarily tied to business goals, and sometimes you find yourself talking to sort of senior business leaders who see this and are horrified and say, what on earth are you doing? But what you're doing by those things is you're building shared experience, you're building connection and relationships between each other. And if the goal of a community for a business is the glue that holds the organization together, that's fundamental, because that's how people build relationships with each other. So I think I've forgotten what the question was, Yurii, if I'm honest, but I feel like we've talked around it at least.
Yes, we're totally on the track, and I'm like, you told about like playing FIFA or something like that,
Yeah.
and I totally get it, and I think that it's so much easier to get people into like playing FIFA or watching Netflix or whatever than like working around like some business stuff, like something that can add an extra layer of work, and but still, if it's a community within the organization, if it's a community for business, it still has to have these values. You still have to have these things that are helping the company and the business to move forward. And of course, these bonds are helping. Still, it has to be this like connection with the business. So at least leadership is not like looking like, oh my God, what's going on? Why are you just playing games instead of like doing stuff? So I'm curious, what specific actions do you take to motivate people to build these relationships, to create these bonds in a way that also beneficial for the business growth?
When I say that I think that a community should have a leader, that's not because I necessarily think that groups can't self-organize, that one person should be responsible for booking sessions or things like that, because that's not a sign of a healthy community. That's the sort of thing that should be decentralized. The reason that I think a leader should be there is they should be the person who is aware of the behaviors of the community and looking for those communities and looking for those connections and helping to reinforce them. There is a concept that I've learned about whilst getting more into social learning, of the role of a convener. And a convener is a person who finds these pockets of conversation and these pockets of value that are going on and knows somebody else who might benefit from that. So the way I describe myself to people, when people say, what do you do? I say, I talk to people and know things. And that's kind of what I think the role of a leader should be. They should be helping this person, people we talked about earlier, saying this person over here who's got that problem, they should know this person over here has been struggling with or has solved that problem, and bring them together. And those are the kind of things that I think people actually really benefit from, and they actually really value, because they feel like they have achieved something, or they have got value from engaging with that community. And that's something that you wouldn't have got if you weren't part. I think again, I've forgotten what your question was, but yeah, I think that answers what you were asking.
I think that what you also told that the leader is kind of being a bridge between like
Mm,
humans and business, and this leader also having this goal in mind and kind of like helping, trying to understand like what are people needs, what is organization needs, and like how to combine, how to collaborate together into and move into the right direction.
exactly. Yeah. And I think there is an element of bringing those people together as well, because that is a role in and of itself. And like we said, we talk about focused multidisciplinary teams, you might actually look at a community in that way and say, okay, well, if we are giving someone a specific role, we want to help them be successful, and then they learn how to tackle the challenges of talking to their community and working with their community and supporting their community as much as anywhere else. So that's why you often see community of community leads and people like that. It's because there is a shared skill that they are practicing there, and they seek out other people to help learn to do that as well.
I think it's also easier to have the community of practice within the organization than like inviting external people to create these trainings for companies. Because when you are creating the space where people can like grow and learn together, yes, of course, you can invite some speakers, etc., like to bring some extra knowledge. And still, I feel like all these people in one place, in one space, they will create this extra knowledge because like everyone is not on the same level. Everyone has different level of knowledge. And when you are like engaging with each other, when you are asking people to grow together, yeah, it's hard to ask them to grow together because like why would someone who is like senior would like spend their time like training junior experts, etc. And still when you are creating the space of growing, when you are creating this feeling of belonging, I believe it helps to grow a lot within the company.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that I choose to look at the collective knowledge that exists within an organization on a particular subject or domain, as I think of it as a big ball, and that ball exists because as a company, that's the amount of knowledge that we have in a particular field. Now, you might hire a new person who is an industry expert. You bring them in, that ball gets bigger because they've added a bit to it. You might bring in an external trainer to do training for some of the people who are at your organization, and again, the ball gets bigger because you've brought that in. As an organization, you are collectively more capable than you were before you engaged in that learning activity. But there's also a downside to that. So people leave. If you have a culture where you reward either consciously or unconsciously single points of failure and expertise, people hoard knowledge, and there's always somebody who's prepared to pay you more for that knowledge than you are. So those people leave, they take that knowledge and experience with them, and then the ball gets smaller again. So the gap that communities fill is they make that knowledge more resilient. And they say, okay, well, if these people over here go to a conference, for example, and they hear this banging talk from someone, and it's amazing, and it changes the way that they think about the task they're doing. If that's the end of the journey, that's a failure, because all you've done is you've helped that one person, and we all love helping one person, but as an organization, you've just created another single point of failure. So as a community, what we want to see happening is this person going off to a conference, hearing something amazing, come back, injecting that enthusiasm into the community. Oh my God, I heard this, it was amazing, we did this brilliant idea, and I've got to try it. We're going to try it in our team. We'll let you know how it happens. And it gets better, and that works. And I think, actually, this would be a great use of our time. Actually, the person, should we try and get them in and see if they can run a session for us? And we bring them in, and then everybody hears it firsthand, and we get that result, and we get that depth of knowledge and experience that comes into the community. And then, if that person who went to the conference decides to move on and leaves, then okay, well, that's great. We wish them well, and we hope they're successful. But we've still got the benefit from all of that as well, and that's the thing that's really, really valuable for organizations, is because it retains and embeds that knowledge that one single point has gone off and brought in.
Yeah. Totally, I totally get it, and I love your approach with the ball and like making it smaller and bigger, because when you are like bringing all this knowledge in one person, and then this person like shares this knowledge with everyone else, when this person, even if this person is going like out, going to another company, the ball is not getting smaller, it's like remains the same. So it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, like in your community journey, what teams do you usually work the most while building a community?
I don't know if I'd normally work specifically with a team, but I suppose it depends on what the goal is. So if I give you an example, I used to work for a company, and my background is in software testing, and I worked with a test community of practice, and the goal of that community of practice was, we want to build the best test function in the world, and which was a lovely goal. Actually, it was the most exciting one I've ever been part of. But if you think about that, you think, okay, well, we can't just decide we're the best now. There has to be some sort of meaningful metric out of that. So the teams that you go and work with and you talk to is that, okay, well, let's talk to the delivery teams and say, okay, well, we're setting out, we're making changes to try and be the best test function in the world. Are you seeing that? Is that the results that you're seeing? How is the work that we're doing and the things that we're changing and we're delivering, how is that affecting you? Is it working? Is it making things better? And it might be, yes, actually, we're delivering things much faster. We're seeing teams work more effectively together. We're finding that people are not hoarding knowledge, and they are people in non-testing roles are thinking about quality as well. That's good. We are delivering these kind of things that we are setting out to do. Also, we might find that actually this is causing points of friction for us here. We're seeing that the programmers are pushing back on this. They're finding that it's causing bottlenecks for them. They just don't want to do it. There's and it surfaces problems. That's bad. So we need to know about that, so we can work and we can tackle, we can all move through that together, because we're not going to achieve our goals if we just look into internally and say, okay, well, this is us, so this is what we're going to do. You have to look at the world around you to say, actually, are we having the impact that we should be having?
How do you measure the impact?
Depends. Recently, I've been looking at a model that has been put together by Beverly and Etienne Venkatraina, along with some other people, around articulating value creation. And there's sort of 8 different ways that they quantify value. I find that when you talk to non-community people, you get through the first 4 and then they start to glaze over because they're a little bit more conceptual. But they talk about value in different ways. So the key 4 that I tend to talk about are immediate value, potential value, applied value, and realized value. Around those, I'll get it wrong if I don't look, strategic value, transformative value, enabling value, and orienting value. But those first 4 are the 4 that I talk about because they're quite easy for people to grasp and understand. And I'll give you an example because we're talking about it now. So you reached out to me and said, hi, I do this podcast, will you come on it? And I said yes. So the immediate value that we get out of this is I get to talk for 45 minutes and you get another episode of your podcast. So we've got something out of this conversation. Now, we might never speak again, and that'd be a shame, but we have achieved something already. Potential value might be that I eventually pull my finger out and say, okay, I'm going to start this podcast that I want to start. I don't know what I'm doing, where I go, I know Yurii. He seemed to know what he was doing. I'll reach out to him and see if he'll talk to me. And then we do. So that's potential. So we haven't actually achieved anything. We might have a conversation and I might leave it another 6 months and not bother to start it. Or I might decide, that sounds like hard work, I'm not going to do that. If I did decide, though, actually, I do want to do that, and you're very kind, you say, oh yeah, I'll help you out if you like. Let's get you set up. That's applied value. We're working on something together towards a clear outcome. And And obviously realized value is I've started my podcast, I've set it up, people are listening to it and getting value out of it. So we go round in this big circle, and all of these steps sort of feed into each other. And people find this really, when you explain this to them, particularly with senior business leaders, I found they get that, and they sort of understand that there is this investment that needs to be made up front, which is something that's intangible and you can't necessarily see. But it leads to something valuable in the future. And this conceptually I found is really important, because you're talking about these intangible things. And once you get people on board with that, you say, okay, so you accept that this concept of immediate value, of potential value, you accept that this is a thing. Great. Now, if that's going, let's think about some tangible things that you might see, that if we saw these things, we would be creating the conditions for these intangible things to happen. So that's when you can talk, I'll come back to it again. That's your board game session. You say, okay, we got people, they've given up an hour of their day to go and, just spend time together. Nothing's happening. But we have invested this number of hours in relationship building, of course, all of these people across the organization. And you might actually be able to visualize that with data. You can use a chord diagram and say, okay, well, we got people from here, and they've connected with these people, and these are relationships that now exist. So this is all holding the organization together. This is the glue that we've created by bringing those people together. Now, person A and person B, they might not actually talk to each other for another 6 months, for 2 years. They might actually never meet again, but they might do. And they might solve a problem for each other because they're now familiar with each other. They understand each other. And that, for me, has actually turned out to be really successful, because you can articulate that in the language that people who are not community people, who are business focused, they can see it, they can appreciate it, and they can understand it. So that's the way I talk about value and setting goals and making progress.
And also, to your point, it's so much easier to ask questions afterwards, because, for example, you are like, as an example of a podcast, now we know each other and you can easily ask me any question. I can answer you any question. And if you don't know a person, it's so hard to go and ask this person a question like, oh, I don't know this person, they don't know me. Like, well, what if they won't answer me? Like, why should they care? Why should I bother them? But when you know the person, when you build this at least a little bit of relationships, you can like, hey, Drew, I have this question. Can you please answer me? And it's so much easier. And it's like, it can save like months of someone is trying to do by themselves just by going and asking a question, because someone else may have done it like for years and just share it with them. And still community is not always a bright side. There is also a dark side. So I get how you talk about the value, about like why community is important. Still, leadership is leadership, and they need to like have clear numbers, clear facts. So if something goes wrong, how do you talk about the challenges you face in the community?
So give me an example of things going wrong.
For example, you created an event and you told your leadership that, I will create this series of event. We will market it in the community and we will invite like 100 people. And then at the end of the day, like 5 people showed up.
So that happens. And there is a reality that happens. And there is a bit of spin and a bit of blag that you've got to get through with that. So I rely on one of the best bits of advice that I've ever been given when community. So when I first started the Ministry of Test Peterborough meetup, it started off with loads of people were turning up, and then we got about 4 or 5 in, and I had a session and there was like 10 people, and it had really gone down, and I was really stressed about it, because otherwise, we're losing so many people not turning up. And I was having this conversation and saying, look, I don't know what to do, because people aren't coming. And the advice was, do you actually care how many people turn up? Let's think about it. If you had 100 people turn up and 10 people got value out of it, would you consider that to be a success? And you think, well, probably not, because only 10 people have got it. So, okay, so supposing 10 people turn up and all 10 got value out of that, do you consider that to be a success? And you think, yes, Yes, I would actually, because everybody is happy. And that's kind of the way you've got to look at these kind of things. Because if you have a session with where you do all the work and then maybe like 5 people turn up, then okay, that's not great. But you've got to focus on those 5 people and say, okay, well, they've obviously come because they want something. We need to make sure that we give it to them and make sure that this is a valuable experience for them. Now, you're probably not going to do that again because your return on investment for the general populace is relatively low. However, you don't know, one of those 5 people might go on and do something amazing with it. I have done events where nobody has turned up, and that's quite embarrassing when that happens. I did an internal networking event for our graduate program, and we advertised it. We said, come along, come and meet the community, come back. 0 people turned up. And the way you've got to think about it and move on is, well, at least I've not wasted anybody's time by them coming along and not valuing the experience. I won't do that again. I've learned something. Let's spin it off. We'll move on with our lives. Let's do something else. And generally speaking, my experience is that as organizations are generally not that close to the wire, that they are that bothered about learning something that goes wrong. So if you do something and it doesn't work, then as long as you've learned for it, move on and don't do it again. If you just keep doing the same thing, then that's a more indicative problem of the way that you're approaching this problem. If you have 2 people turning up every week for a community session, it's not really a community that you've built there, and there's probably a more focused way that you could serve those people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like it's also about learning, and as you said, today we've learned something, and then to use this knowledge to make things better in the future. And Drew, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit. So the final question: what is one thing to do right away for someone struggling with identifying their community?
Okay, the one thing you should do when you're struggling, because everybody struggles with that, at one point in the life cycle of the community, you are going to find that is a problem. Because if you do your job well, you meet the needs of the community, and then they no longer have a need for the community. So that is always going to be an issue. The way that you address that is, as a community, you come together and say, let's reflect on what we're doing, what our purpose is. Is this still what we want to do? Do we still need to have this community? Are we striving for the right things anymore? Because it might just be me, because I'm very purpose driven, but when I join a community, I'm part of that community because it means something to me and I believe in what it's doing. Now, if the thing that community is setting out to achieve is no longer meaningful to the members of the community, then people aren't going to invest in it. So reflect on what the focus is, reflect on what it is you're striving and working towards, reflect on whether you're achieving it. If you're not achieving it, what do you need to change? What do people want? And is it still the right thing for you to be focusing on? I suppose is the way I would approach that.
Last but not least, name 2 people I should reach out to talk about community ROI.
Okay. I had a look through the people you've already spoken to, and there's loads of them, but I think
you can name anyone, like someone who's jumping into your mind right now.
Oh, there's too many, but I suppose 2 people I think if you haven't spoken to already, you really need to. So firstly, I talked to Simon Tomes. So he is the community manager at Ministry of Testing. He does amazing work, runs really different types of sessions within the Ministry of Testing community. He's also just started up a blog, which I'm really enjoying at the moment. He's a great person to talk to. Other person is I would recommend is Travis Tennyson. So he is director at the Center for Community Learning at West Washington University. but he's one of my go-to social learning people, and he's one of the other people who thinks of themselves as a convener and bringing people together. We had a great chat. As I said, I describe myself as I talk to people and know things. He says I ride my bike around campus and drink coffee with people. So he's really interesting to talk to. He does a lot of workshops around communities of practice and social learning. He's a great person to learn from.
Got it. Thank you very much. And what is the best way to connect with you?
So best way to connect with me, I think, is probably LinkedIn. I am quite selective with my social media, but I'm on Blue Sky and Mastodon. So you can reach out to me there. I'd love to talk to people.
Got it, Drew. Thank you so much for this conversation, for letting me into your inner world of community building, sharing your experiences, talking about the different values and strategies, and like uncovering this like general feeling of how doing nothing might be really building relationships. What looks like doing nothing is really building relationships, and how it really can help businesses to grow. And thank you so much for coming here.
Thanks for having me. It's been great to talk to you.
And yeah, see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about how the community can help you reach and overcome your business goals faster, let's connect on LinkedIn and talk about it. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.